I'm Chris Hensing. This is CBC Windsor News. Thanks for watching. Tonight, we take you to Tecumseh, where a new statue has been unveiled. We'll share the history behind the art. Plus, ants covering a food counter at a fast food joint trigger an inspection after those events last week. We break down the process and how the health unit decides what spaces are safe. And a deep dive into the Inflation Reduction Act. We bring in our Washington correspondent as the final details get ironed out. An artist has cut a piece of the past into a poplar tree. Chief Tecumseh now stands tall at a park in the town that he's been named after. The CBC's Tyler Clapp was at today's dedication, described by one of Tecumseh's descendants as a celebration.
Nestled on the beach of Lakewood Park North in Tecumseh, the community comes together with direct descendants of Chief Tecumseh to celebrate a new landmark. For Patricia Chanou, a direct descendant of Chief Tecumseh, it offers an opportunity to strengthen Indigenous identity.
We need to keep place and landmarks clear across creation so that we can always have something that tells their story.
Chief Tecumseh was a Shawnee leader who protected the area from American invasion in the War of 1812. The wooden sculpture was carved by local artist Heather Malaby, a process that took about a year. According to Mayor Gary McNamara, the sculpture's location is significant.
In October 5th, 1813, this is where they gathered for the retreat to Fort London. That's when they left Malden, Fort Malden, with the women and children. And just up the river, actually, that's where Tecumseh succumbed to the Battle of Meridiantown.
For the sculpture's creator, it was an eye-opening experience. Malaby says the process involved much discussion with Chief Tecumseh's descendants.
This is a culmination of a year's worth of research back and forth. And the strength and the commitment of also the town and Patricia Chanou to bring this culture forward is really amazing.
Chanou also says the sculpture is a symbol of where things could go moving forward.
We will work with the town of Tecumseh if this is one of the initiatives that they want to continue, that we now begin to help with education.
An education this statue can pass on to future generations. Tyler Clapp, CBC News, Tecumseh.
From something beautiful to something a little unsettling, a complaint about ants on a serving counter at a Windsor Tim Hortons caught your attention last week. It was one of our most read stories online. Tonight, TJ Deere walks us through what triggers an inspection with the health unit and how you can track down those results.
What's the process like to inspect a location that has food on site? The local health unit has dedicated public health inspectors that take a look at how safe any location that has food there, known as food premises, really is. How often they're inspected depends on how likely a foodborne illness or outbreak could occur from food being served. High-risk food premises, such as dine-in restaurants, are inspected at least 3 times a year. Medium-risk food premises are inspected at least twice a year. These places include fast food restaurants, such as that Tim Hortons where the ants were found. Places like convenience stores are considered low-risk food premises and are inspected once a year or more if necessary. Inspections are not scheduled with the owner or operator of the food premises, meaning that inspectors can show up at any time. As part of regular inspections, inspectors are required to look at anything that could transmit an infection or a disease. These include food prep equipment and utensils, any furniture where food is prepared, the ventilation system, garbage and waste systems, pest control measures, table covers and napkins, cloths and towels, and vending machines. Cleansing and sanitizing equipment and procedures are also inspected, as are sanitary facilities such as bathrooms. Food handling and storage is also looked at. These elements of a premises are required to be inspected under the province's Health Protection and Promotion Act. The health unit can shut a place down if there's no hot water or drinkable water source, no power, a sewage backup, a foodborne illness or outbreak, a pest infestation, or heat, smoke, or water damage. A premises can also be shut down if it's generally unsanitary or for any other health hazards the inspector observes. Those details are what makes up a compliance inspection. If a complaint is received from the public, an inspector can show up more often and conduct a more detailed inspection relating to the complaint. Once an inspection is completed, the Health Protection and Promotion Act requires inspection reports to be publicly available to comply with the province's public health standards. Here in Windsor, Essex, the results of those reports are available at the health unit's online disclosure page.
We've seen the way decisions made in Washington have a major influence here in Windsor. The Inflation Reduction Act is why construction is still paused at part of the electric vehicle battery plant right now. The rules that will implement the act are being written. It's a pivotal moment for the Biden administration and our automotive industry here in Windsor. Alex Panetta is Washington-based correspondent for CBC News. He joins us now. You've covered this act, you've covered the ramifications, but what's the goal with this thing?
And that's the $64,000 question, really, because the act itself is written, the general language is out there. But what's happening now is the IRS and the Treasury Department are writing the specific rules about how the tax credits are going to work. Now, if you want to hear, to quote an Alanis Morissette song, isn't it ironic that about a year ago, Canada was arguing vociferously for the United States to open up the tent? All right, don't be protectionist, we were saying. Well, now you have some Canadians arguing for the United States to shut the gate and to be more protectionist in the writing of this act. And I'll explain why. So Canada and Mexico were essentially given a pass in the writing of this legislation, largely the result of the work of Joe Manchin, senator from West Virginia. So once Canada and Mexico got inside the tent and North American products were treated as American products, you start to have interests at play saying, look, we shouldn't open it further to products from Europe and Asia. And you might imagine that the Asians and the Europeans are looking for the same deal that Canada got. And this has caused some geopolitical tension with the Europeans, particularly now during the conflict in Ukraine. And you're looking at also Japan having recently signed an agreement with the United States, a critical minerals sharing agreement, which the administration has interpreted to be a free trade agreement under the act, allowing Asian goods to be treated as American goods as well. The Europeans don't have that deal yet. So basically what's happening now, the $64,000 question I alluded to earlier was, is the purpose of this act to sell more electric vehicles? Or should it be to steer supply chains closer to North America, to get more North American critical minerals and more North American plants and battery makers? And that's really the fight that's happening right now.
I guess that's the big part that we watch. We keep hearing about our electric vehicle battery plant, but then there's big promises about the supply side. Is that where the Canadian companies are paying attention to right now?
I think a lot of Canadian companies are paying attention to this. I spoke with one battery maker based in British Columbia and in Quebec, which is upset that iron is not treated as a critical mineral. They're saying, for instance, if iron were to be treated like a critical mineral, you'd have a lot more North American content in these batteries. And that's one of many types of judgment calls that the Treasury Department and the IRS have to make now. So, what minerals get treated as critical minerals? What vehicles get treated as commercial vehicles? And I'll give you one example there. A leased car, under the current interpretation of the Act by the IRS, a leased car would be treated as a commercial vehicle and therefore not subject to any of the conditions that other cars face. So, Joe Manchin's upset about this. He and some of the Canadians are saying, wait a second, we didn't intend for this Act to allow all sorts of foreign inputs to be brought into North America and used in the construction of cars here. We want to rebuild supply chains here. We want to create an industrial base on this continent so that we're no longer reliant on China. And this is going to be playing out over the next few weeks and months as the fine print gets completed on this legislation.
Okay, and we'll be paying attention to this as well. We should add, you've got an analysis piece up on our cbc.ca website that people should be able to read as well. Thanks for this, Alex.
Thank you.
Tonight, the search continues for two people swept away by a river after a landslide north of Quebec City. It happened Saturday when a storm brought more than 100 millimeters of rain in less than 2 hours. The CBC's Alison Northcott reports.
For a third day, police helicopters flew above Rivière-Éternité, searching for two people swept away by rushing waters.
La rivière était en débordement parce que
Police say 3 people were trying to clear debris from the road when the overflowing river and a landslide washed them away. Radio-Canada has identified one of the missing as Pascale Racine, a woman in her 40s who was traveling in the region with her partner. He survived but is in hospital with serious injuries. Police say the search is a colossal effort, with teams on foot, divers, boats, and helicopters scouring the winding river and all along its banks. It involves dozens of police backed up by trained volunteers.
We're basically looking on the banks of the river and the woods for anything that we can find. We're looking also for clues like these piece of clothing and things like that, who can help us maybe trying to locate the people.
Environment Canada says 130 millimeters of rain fell in just 2 hours, more rain in one furious downpour than the area usually gets in the entire month of July. The damage has cut the municipality of Rivière-Éternité in two and forced nearly 50 people from their homes. I was with my son and my granddaughter, says Guy Côté. The water started coming up in the basement, 4 feet, 5 feet. I was panicking. He says that's when firefighters arrived to help them escape. Campers at a nearby provincial park evacuated the area by boat and helicopter after the rain and debris cut off the exit route. Thierry Girard was camping with his 3 kids. He says it was the worst storm he's ever seen. Municipal officials say they're working to assess and repair the damage quickly as the complicated search for the missing continues. Alison Northcott, CBC News, Montreal.
Really shows the power a storm can pack in its punch. Israel has launched a major incursion in the occupied West Bank. Troops and drones have targeted the Jenin refugee camp. CBC's Chris Brown has the story.
Israel's military hit the Jenin refugee camp hard, first with drones and then about 2,000 troops. Smoke obscured the skyline and gunfire echoed throughout the streets. The occupied West Bank hasn't seen this kind of intense warfare in 2 decades. It was like World War III, said 67-year-old Hussein Zidan. They're attacking unarmed people with planes and rockets. The Israeli Defense Forces say every effort is being made to avoid civilian casualties as they target militant headquarters.
We're focused on destabilizing and stopping the infrastructure of terrorism inside the camp. Command centers, weapons.
Jenin has been a refugee camp for so long, decades, that a densely packed city has grown up around it. Even with purportedly precision strikes, there are reports civilians were hit. We're anxious, said this paramedic, because the Israeli attacks don't differentiate between medics, civilians, or members of the resistance. The Palestinian president Mahmoud Abbas called on the international community to impose sanctions on Israel and condemn what he called terrorist aggression. Video released by Israeli police emphasized the arrest of militants. Israeli authorities claim Jenin has been the launching point for a succession of attacks on Israeli cities and settlements in recent months. But hundreds of settlers have also ransacked Palestinian communities with impunity, claim Palestinian leaders, furthering the worsening spiral of violence. Israel's ultranationalist right-wing coalition government has been in a deep crisis for months from domestic opponents determined to thwart its plans to change the judiciary. Monday, protests resumed with a blockade of Ben Gurion Airport. And this London-based analyst says with the raids coming on the same day, some are questioning whether the military action was also intended to distract Israelis.
I'm not so sure those who take this decision, they can tell themselves whether the decision is purely for security reasons or in their mind it mixed together to deflect from their own domestic agenda.
How long the Jenin military operation will last is unclear, but the constant fear is that the violence could escalate into a far more destructive encounter as more militants join the fight. Chris Brown, CBC News, London.
So we take a live look outside in Windsor. Beautiful skies as we see a heat warning from Environment Canada. It is going to get hot. It's going to last a couple days. It's going to start tomorrow, and the details are coming up after the break. These wildfires and all that smoke that came with them kept coming up in conversation this week and all across Ontario. Clearly, climate change is on our minds, but there's some threats we might not even be thinking about. According to top doctors, those threats, they're small and they're potent. Patrick Swadden explains.
Another smoky haze over Toronto this week. Not the only example of climate change. Ontario top doctor Kieran Moore says he expects to see more cases of tick-borne illnesses in the province as climate change fuels an explosion of tick populations due to milder winters.
It's become significantly warmer to a level that allows the tick populations, the tick vector of Lyme disease, the black-legged tick, to set up home and start to reproduce and maintain its life cycles,
which has dramatically increased the prevalence of the diseases they carry, according to this infectious disease expert.
Now, Lyme and these other diseases are spreading a lot more than before. We never used to see Lyme disease in certain places, like in parts of Northern Ontario.
And the increases have been dramatic, going from 144 reported cases in 2009 to over 2,000 last year.
It's becoming harder and harder to isolate where actually Lyme is.
But it's not just Lyme disease.
Anaplasma babesia, possibly the Powassan-type viruses, will follow suit.
Each of those diseases presenting a range of symptoms. Dr. Moore saying healthcare providers now required to report cases of each.
Because the geography of the ticks are changing, I think we need a high index of suspicion to look for these things.
Banerjee says she hasn't seen those diseases yet, but Lyme disease is on the rise. This climate change researcher contracted it in 2021.
The symptoms were kind of fever, aches and chills, and the all-around feeling of feeling quite junky.
While Trant says climate change is a key factor, human behavior also plays a role as developments encroach on areas where tick populations are established. Trant says we need to adapt and find ways to deal with them.
Until vaccines are available for Lyme, ticks are going to be very much a part of our future. And so I think it's really about being as safe as we can.
Which he says means frequent tick checks and checking with a doctor if one has been embedded for over 24 hours.
So if you are headed for a hike in the woods, Dr. Banerjee's advice is insect repellent. Also, wear long sleeves, even on a hot one like today. And finally, function over fashion. Tuck those pants into those socks. It could save you a trip to the doctor. Patrick Swadden, CBC News, Toronto.
Some great tips from Patrick there with some terrible video of some creepy crawlies there. I'm going to be itching for the rest of the show here. We have a heat warning in place. It's going to start tomorrow, but for more of the details on what we're expecting here in Windsor, Essex, go to CBC meteorologist Jay Scotland with our weather.
Well, Chris, hot and muggy weather. That will be the theme for the next few days. We do have a heat warning in effect, not just across southwestern Ontario, but much of southern and eastern Ontario under this advisory. And this will be for daytime highs, high 20s, low 30s for the next couple of days. Humidex values, high 30s to even over 40 in a few places. And if you don't have AC in your home, your house, your apartment, overnight conditions offering little relief. It'll be overnight temperatures of around the 20-degree mark, so that does not give your home a chance to reset or to cool down overnight before another hot one the next day. So just be mindful if you are susceptible to heat illness. The next couple of days will be hot and sticky, and we could be looking at, with that humid air in place, some unsettled conditions as well into the afternoon and early evening hours. Just daytime heating could see some showers and isolated thunderstorms bubbling up. So that chance will continue to diminish this evening. Fairly quiet conditions overnight. We may see in a few low-lying areas some fog patches developing into early Tuesday morning. Otherwise, mostly sunny start to the day. We will watch for a few very isolated showers to develop in the afternoon. Just know that when you see these very isolated showers, there's a good chance that they come with a rumble of thunder. That means lightning. First sound of thunder, head indoors, and we could see some more moderate local downpours where these storms develop. It's daytime heating. Bit random, but just that chance is there across southwestern Ontario for your Tuesday afternoon. Into Wednesday, sunny start to the day. We will watch for that approaching cold front. That's relief as we get Thursday into Friday. But ahead of it, still fairly sunny, fairly warm, and very muggy conditions for your Wednesday. Tonight, temperatures below 20. It'll be a lot better than what we see certainly tomorrow night. And then into the afternoon, temperatures around 30 degrees, likely feeling high 30s to near 40 in a few spots, and do keep an ear to the sky, particularly into the late afternoon for that isolated thunderstorm chance. Still hot on Wednesday. That cold front starts to move in Thursday. Muggy to start, but relief as we get into the second half of Thursday. And then you can see cooler temperatures Friday, Saturday. Not cool, cooler than the next few days as we look to that weekend forecast. Chris?
Muggy. That is my favorite word of summer. Always looking forward to that. Up next, we're going to have a look at a story about how a collector could be a millionaire if they know what they're looking for. That's after the break. An anonymous collector in the Toronto area could soon be living an epic fantasy. That's because the card collector is the owner of a one-of-a-kind card put out by the company behind Magic: The Gathering. The CBC's Thomas Dagg reports on the magic cash that could bring.
Forget hockey cards and collectible toys. The latest find, potentially worth millions, comes straight from Middle Earth.
We were like wow, this is insane.
In the famous tales of J.R.R. Tolkien, Hobbit Frodo Baggins sets out to destroy the mythical One Ring. the most powerful of them all, and more recently, the inspiration for a highly sought-after collector's card found by a Toronto man.
This is the only copy of the one-of-one ring that's ever going to exist.
There's some attraction to gaming card collectors, Lord of the Ring collectors, just the ability to have the one ring. There's nothing else out there like it.
The card didn't come from this shop, but the staff have been helping the owner spread the word. The makers of the collectible card game Magic the Gathering recently partnered with the Lord of the Rings to release a special collection, promoted by movie star Elijah Wood.
This is amazing. It's incredible to see, and the art is beautiful.
Come on. Fans shared videos as they searched for the One Ring card.
At some point in the past few days, the man bought the Lord of the Rings Magic the Gathering cards, one pack, opened it, and found the one-of-a-kind that collectors around the world were after.
He's remaining anonymous for now, but tells CBC News he's a cashier and forklift operator. I couldn't believe it was real, he says, so I reached out to a few friends to confirm it. Since then, I've been overwhelmed with joy and excitement. Here's the card itself, analyzed and classified as mint condition, nearly the highest grade possible.
There was 10, 20, 30 people out there that all claimed that they had this card. They were reaching out to all the grading companies, and it was so when this one came, it was like, yeah, jump in line.
Offers are pouring in for more than $2 million. Consider it like a lottery jackpot, with a bit of sci-fi thrown in. Thomas Dagg, CBC News, Whitby, Ontario.
What a moment it must have been to open up that package there. Beijing is sweltering in a summer heat wave, but some residents are finding ways to keep cool. Elephants at the Beijing Wildlife Park getting the usual treatment, staying fresh, keeping clean, but keepers have come up with other unusual solutions to this as well. How about an appetizer of ice for some red pandas, or better still, maybe a little bit of watermelon for some hippos there. Gotta love a little bite like that. China says it's broken a heat record with the highest number of hot days in a 6-month period since those records began. One of the world's oldest giant pandas marked her 33rd birthday over the weekend. There was a special celebration for Zinzin at the zoo where she lives in Mexico City. She was treated to an apple cake, colorful piñatas filled with apples, which are her favorite food. Dozens of panda fans tuned out, and they were there serving birthday cake by China's ambassador to Mexico. Zinzin is the offspring of a pair of giant pandas that were presented to Mexico by China in 1975. Pandas normally live to be about 20 in the wild, 30 in captivity. Happy 33rd birthday there. That's it for CBC Windsor News. Don't forget, for news anytime, you can go to our website, cbc.ca/Windsor. Thanks for watching. Have yourself a wonderful night.